Eugene, it came out this week that Rob and Izzy were set to fight in New York, November, Madison Square Garden, huge headline event, and securing a voucher to get back into the country was what stopped this from happening. Is that accurate?
No, that's not completely accurate. Yeah, I think nothing came over. Nothing really came past me about anything official being named for New York or Robert Whittaker or anything. Yeah, no utterances from any official source that was going to happen.
Right, so it was kind of just an assumption that was happening, and that was the date you were hoping for?
Which is an assumption, yeah, it was an assumption, which is a very bad thing in the sport. But I did notice that there was some, on my YouTube feed, there were some articles about something about Robert and stuff being the next fight, but he might be. I don't know who the next opponent is. But one thing that's looking very unlikely is for us to be able to get a voucher to get back into this country this year. That is like ultimately the crux of the problem. Not the opponent. We don't care about the opponent. It can be Robert. It might not be Robert. I've already stated, as far as I'm concerned, Robert's competing with everybody else for that spot. But we cannot get into the country again this year, so it'll have to be pushed back to next year. And unfortunately for Robert and his team, that puts them in a really unfortunate predicament, because in between all of that happening, someone else might put up their hand and be a much better, more kind of delectable fight. For we were like, imagine if Darren Till got 2 wins, and Robert, you're getting shifted back, my friend. So but that's the risk that he took when he said no to that other fight, which he should have taken.
With obviously the voucher system not really helping you guys out, is there any concern that the UFC might do what they did with the heavyweight title and look to book an interim title in the meantime? Nah, because there's no reason to. There's no reason to do that. Israel's happy with what he's doing. There's no reason for a disgruntled UFC to come up and just all of a sudden make it. There's always something behind those interim titles, all but 1 or 2 in the history of them. There's a lot more going on behind the scene that people don't know about, and I don't see a reason for them to do that at the moment. And there's such an interim title it's like when Israel won an interim title, it's like hollow. It feels hollow because it doesn't mean anything. The only thing it means, the only positive things it brings you is you become a pay-per-view partner when you do fight for the real title. But other than that, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean you're the best in the world. It doesn't mean you're ascended to the very top you could possibly be, because there's still a champion that exists. And that's the problem with interim titles. But the reason they are important from a business perspective is because they make you a pay-per-view partner. Yeah. But it's the MIQ situation, our quarantine situation is the main thing that's put this team in a little bit of disarray at the moment, to be honest. How else has this affected you? I know Kai was looking to fight in September. That's now reported to be a December fight. Was he the only one who's had a fight come across the table and had to work really hard to make something happen?
I mean, Kai, that fight got pushed back to December because Cody's had some personal problem and Cody wasn't able to do the fight, so it got pushed back. Kai was going to do the fight. Kai does not have a voucher, and as a team, and Kai and his family, they decided that fight, they deemed that fight too important, and what was possibly up for grabs too important to turn it down. And so they're taking a massive risk, which I haven't recommended to any of my guys to make, but he's going to take a massive risk and leave the country without a voucher, essentially adding himself to that pool of thousands and thousands and thousands of Kiwis that are stuck outside trying to get in and can't get a voucher. That's I mean that's a massive life-changing decision that he's got to make. He, especially with a wife and kids at home, he could be stuck till I mean I hate to even say April, May, June. You just you just don't know, but it's a massive risk. All my guys would be fighting if they could get MIQ vouchers. All my guys would have been fighting 2 or 3 times this year. But at a certain point, for some reason, that MIQ system just started failing. And I'm not sure why. Because we previously were always able to get home, maybe not the week after. Where, as you know, like as people know, sometimes the guys had to hang around for 5 weeks. But they were still able to get home. Now you can't even get home. Full stop. And I don't know what's changed. I'm not sure, like you'll have to talk to people that are behind the scenes to know. But something has drastically changed where now you can't even get a voucher to get home. I'm not sure what it is.
How tough is that for the guys and the girls in the gym who need to go overseas to fight to make a living?
Oh, super tough. Super tough. Like my guys will literally, if this carries on, will literally have to take a risk and leave overseas, which is a massive call, or they're gonna have to dust off their CVs and go and do word processing, like I like to say, work in an office or make people's coffees or whatever they want to do for a living. They're gonna have to really drastically think about earning an income within this country, because it's been snatched out from under them by this MIQ system, and how inefficient it is, and how it's just run just terribly by the government at the moment. So although we're in massive support of the way that this country is dealing with COVID, there are certain aspects of it that are just not running the way that they should be running, and that is one of them. So I mean, yeah, you could see my guys dusting off their aprons, working at the local kitchen, or I don't know what they do I honestly don't know what they do for a living outside of this, but we're in some pretty dire consequences at the moment. I've got 2 athletes right now that are one has left without a voucher, and one is going to leave without a voucher, and put themselves in that terrible pool of people that are stuck outside this country. And I hate to think of how long they're going to be stuck outside the country, because the system's so terrible.
In an interview with News Talk ZB this week, Olympian Dylan Schmidt suggested, the government should look at some sort of facility for athletes who need to travel overseas so they can get back into the country. I mean, is that something that you'd back, or do you think that comes across as trying to get some preferential treatment for the athletes of the country?
I see both sides of it. It does come about a little bit elitist, like athletes should be treated differently to other people, but I think you should categorize some of those athletes as professionals, and some of them, this is their job and this is how they make their living. And maybe in terms of that, everybody that makes their living overseas, not just athletes, should be given some sort of preferential treatment with MIQ vouchers and stuff, not just athletes. I do see the danger in singling out just athletes and letting the rest of the society, the rest of the population go unnoticed. But I think some special provisions should be made for people that exclusively make a living overseas. That would solve not just the UFC fighters' problems, but so many other people's problems. There has to be a better way to deal with this than what's currently going on.
You mentioned athletes going over without vouchers. Genah Fabian obviously flew out last week for her semi-final in the PFL. Huge fight for her against Kayla Harrison. What was the discussion like before she left?
The discussion was emotional, and it's not normally emotional, but when she potentially knew she's going into such a tough fight with no cornerman,
no one familiar, no one that she's trained with, no familiarity with anybody at all that's going to be coaching her, because we don't have vouchers, and the coaches can't afford to get stuck over there. Plus, on the back of her mind, the fact that she could possibly be stuck away from her friends and family and her home for 6+ months or more, an indeterminate amount of time, to be honest. She was upset, but she's a professional and she has to pull everything together, and she has to perform on that night. Very, very difficult fight. It's kind of like every now and then you still get these classic fights where you get these two people with two clearly defined skill sets, and it's one of those classic fights that comes back from like back in the 90s. You have one person who's very good at stand-up, one person who's very good at grappling. Then their weaknesses are each other's strengths, and it'll be an awesome fight. It's going to be an awesome fight to see if Genah can negate Kayla's wrestling and grappling and judo with the strategy that we've come up with. Yeah, something to look forward to.
Will Genah have anyone in her corner for that fight?
She will. We're lucky enough to have another very dear friend of mine, close friend of the gym's, another coach here, Frank, who at the moment is Frank Hickman has based himself out of America, and he will corner Genah. He will also corner Kai. I thankfully got a voucher to Volk's fight, so come back straight away, so I'll be at Volk's fight, but I don't have a voucher for anybody else's fight. So yeah, it's going to be a difficult finish to the year for most of us. Most of us are not going to be, most of the boys are not going to be able to fight, and then they're not going to be able to earn any income, and so we have to look at this positively, and we have to just use this time to get better at the sport. Yeah.
Is Dan Hooker finally got a fight on that 266 card?
Dan Hooker, nothing official has come through.
Really?
Yeah. Has he said otherwise?
Well, no, he posted a photo on Instagram of him signing something. It might not have even been a fight contract.
Look, the way this thing's is it has to be announced. It has to be announced officially by the governing powers that be, and that's the UFC. And I can just say that he's highly, highly likely to fight on that date. But nothing has been officially announced. So as far as officially, nothing. Just like officially, there ain't no Robert Whittaker fight. There ain't no Robert Whittaker fight until the powers that be, say so. And if they are not saying so, then it could be anyone.
Fair enough. A little bit closer to home, you got a couple of boys in the King in the Ring this weekend. Is that strange for you, having two guys potentially having a face-off during the tournament?
I've been in quite a few instances over the years. We've had that situation. Luckily, it's never happened because they've never both made it to the final. I think what's different about these two is they're both. I would seed them up the very, very top of the guys. So there's a really high likelihood that if they perform well on the night, that they're going to see each other in the final. I think that's a very likely potential final. But that's a bridge I'm honestly going to just cross on the night and figure that out. It's funny because at the same time you don't want them to meet in the final, that also means that you're kind of wishing that one of them loses, and we're never doing that. So it's a funny old thing where you want them to do so well, but in doing so well, you know that they're going to end up with each other. So just let the chips fall where they fall on that one, and then deal with it on the night. So we'll see what happens.
I suppose if anything, it makes the gym look really good if they both make the final.
We get first and second, guaranteed. Yeah.
Sweet.